There's a pattern running in your relationships right now, and the chances are you didn't choose it. It was chosen for you even before you were old enough to speak. It's called your attachment style. And it is quietly shaping who you fall for, how you fight, how much love you can actually let in, and how much you push away without even realizing. By the end of this video, you will know exactly which pattern is yours, and more importantly, you will understand why. Not to judge yourself, but to finally make sense of yourself. Now, I need you to stay with me because this one matters. Before we go any further, if you're new here, this channel is where we explore psychology of real life, not textbook theory, the actual stuff that shows up in your relationships, your self worth, your patterns. Now, if that's what you're here for, please subscribe because you belong here. Let's start with a question I want you to sit with. Think about the last time someone you cared about pulled away from you, went quiet, seemed distant. What happened in your body in that moment? Did your chest tighten? Did you reach for your phone? Did you start rehearsing what you were going to say, preparing for the worst? Or did you feel almost relieved, like a part of you welcomed the space? That response, you see, that automatic, almost instinctive reaction did not begin with that person. It began much earlier with the very first people you ever loved. In the 1960s, a psychiatrist named John Bowlby made a discovery that changed everything we thought that we knew about human development. He found that the way a child bonds with their earliest caregivers creates a kind of internal blueprint, a working model of what relationships are, how safe they are, and what you have to do to keep them. A few years later, researcher Mary Ainsworth took this further and helped us identify four distinct patterns, four attachment styles that play out across a lifetime. What I want to do today is walk you through each one, but not in a clinical, detached way. I want to show you what these patterns feel like from the inside, in your body, in your thoughts, in your relationships. And I want to show you where they come from and crucially where they can actually go. Because here's the thing that most people don't know about attachment: it is not fixed, it never was. Now, before we look at the four styles, I want to share something with you that completely changed how I understand this work. You see, your mind operates on multiple levels at once. There's the part of you that thinks, reasons, reflects, makes decisions in the present moment. And then there are the older parts, the parts that were shaped by experience long before logic even arrived. One part holds everything you were taught, consciously and unconsciously as well, about how the world works, about whether you're worthy, whether people can actually be trusted, whether it's safe to need someone. Now, this part often speaks in the voice of the people who raised you. It's not always kind, but it's always loud. Now, another part, perhaps, the most important, is the part of you that first felt love, fear, longing, and loss. The part that made decisions about survival when you were small and the world felt very large. This part, you see, doesn't speak in words. It speaks in feelings, in reactions, in the tightening of your chest when someone goes quiet. Now, your attachment style lives here in this older feeling part of you. And until we understand what that part learned and why we stay stuck in patterns we can see but can't seem to change. So let's look at the four patterns. And as we do, I want you to notice which one feels like home. Let's go. Secure attachment. I am enough. I am safe. We can do this. Now, I want you to imagine a child who grazes her knee in the playground. She cries, looks up, and her parent is already there. Not panicked, not dismissive, just present. She's held, she's calm. She goes back to playing. This happens imperfectly, inconsistently, because, all parenting does, but it happens enough. And slowly, this child builds a belief at her core: when I need someone, someone comes. I am worthy of that. The world is basically safe. Now, you see, the securely attached person grew up receiving something deceptively simple: consistent enough love. Not perfect love, just reliable enough that their nervous system learned to regulate. They developed what we might call "I'm okay and so are you" relationship with the world. They can be vulnerable without it feeling catastrophic. They can be alone without it feeling like abandonment. They can disagree without it feeling like the end. Their inner voice, the one shaped by early experience, says things like, "You are lovable. You don't have to earn this. You are allowed to take up space." And because their deepest emotional self isn't constantly scanning for threats, their present moment self can actually show up in relationships fully without a hidden agenda running in the background. Now, in relationships, securely attached people can ask for what they need directly without any kind of manipulation or collapse. They can repair after conflict without, needing to win. They find intimacy very nourishing rather than threatening. They don't need constant reassurance, but they are not afraid to give it either. They tend to attract and create relationships that feel grounding rather than consuming. Now, you might be securely attached if relationships feel like a source of comfort more than anxiety. If you can sit with uncertainty in a relationship without it spiraling. If you generally believe that conflict is solvable and that people who love you are not secretly looking for the exit. If this is you, wonderful. Hold it consciously. Know what it took to get here. And if it's not you yet, here is the most important thing I want you to hear today. Secure attachment can be earned at any age, through therapy, through one safe relationship, through understanding the patterns that shaped you. It is never too late. Anxious attachment. I need you close, but I'm terrified that you'll leave. I want you to picture a child whose parent is sometimes warm, attentive, wonderful, and sometimes distracted, stressed, emotionally elsewhere. Not cruel, not absent, just inconsistent. One day, the child cries and is held. The next day, the same cry is met with irritation or silence. The child cannot predict which parent will show up today. So, what does this child learn to do? They learn to watch, to monitor moods, to stay close, to make themselves visible, useful, lovable enough that they cannot be forgotten. Love becomes something you pursue rather than something you resting. The anxiously attached person's nervous system learned a painful lesson early on. Love is available, but it might disappear. So the response is to hold on tighter, to be more caring, more present, more agreeable, anything to make sure the connection does not break. The inner voice here is often relentless. It says things like, "You're not enough." They're going to realize you need to do more to keep this. And underneath that voice is an older feeling, a child self that simply couldn't make sense of why the warmth sometimes vanished. The belief at the core is often something is wrong with me, and that's why love is so hard to keep. In relationships, the anxiously attached person often experiences what feels like an emotional hunger that never quite gets satisfied. Reassurance helps, you see, but only briefly, then the doubt returns. They might text and then anxiously monitor whether the reply comes quickly enough. They might over apologize, over explain, or take responsibility for other people's moods. They might create conflict just to get a reaction because even a negative response is proof that the other person is still there. Now, this isn't neediness, it is a nervous system doing what it was trained to do. Now, this might be you if you find yourself over analyzing messages or silences, if you feel responsible for making sure everyone around you is okay at the expense of yourself. If reassurance from from a partner feels good in the moment, but never quite settles the anxiety underneath. If being alone, with us uncertainty about a relationship is almost unbearable, you might be an anxious attacher. You see, the path forward here is learning slowly, safely, that your needs are not too much, that you don't have to earn love through performance or self sacrifice, that it is safe to be still. This work is often about finding your own voice again, the one that got quieter over the years to keep the peace. Let's move on to avoidant attachment. I'm fine on my own. I don't need this. Now, let's picture a different child, a child whose parent was genuinely loving, but deeply uncomfortable with big emotions. Every time this child cried, there was a subtle pulling away, a slight stiffening, an unspoken message: pull yourself together. Don't be so sensitive. Be strong. Not unkind, just closed. This child is bright, adaptable. They learn quickly that emotional expression creates distance. So they learn to self contain, to process alone, to become, on the surface, impressively independent. The avoidantly attached person builds their identity around self sufficiency. And for a long time, it works. They are competent, capable, often high achieving. They have, their inner voice says, I don't need people. Needing people leads to disappointment. Better not to depend, better to depend on yourself. But, here's what's important to understand: this isn't indifference. Underneath the self containment is often a deep longing for connection, alongside a profound fear that getting close will mean losing themselves, being overwhelmed, or being let down. You see, the belief running underneath is often, I am okay, but other people are unreliable or too much, or even both. Now, in relationships, the avoidant person often gets close and then pulls back, not necessarily consciously. It might look like suddenly getting very busy, finding fault, feeling inexplicably irritated, needing space when they can't quite explain. And, here's the painful irony: the more someone loves them, the more unsafe it can feel, because love means vulnerability, and vulnerability for this nervous system was never safe. Avoidant and anxious attachment styles often find each other. The anxious person's pursuit triggers the avoidant person's withdrawal. This triggers more pursuit, which triggers more withdrawal. It can feel like an unbreakable cycle. And you see, without awareness, it often is. Now, this might be you if intimacy tends to make you want to pull back even when you want to stay. If you're uncomfortable when people become too emotionally dependent on you, if you describe yourself as someone who just doesn't need much emotionally, while quietly noticing that something feels missing, if opening up feels more like a risk than relief. The invitation here is a gentle one. The self sufficiency that protected you was extraordinary, but you don't need that armor anymore. Learning to let someone in slowly, safely, on your terms is not weakness. It is one of the bravest things a person can do. Now, let's talk about the disorganized attachment. I want you here, I need you to go. This is the most complex pattern, and I want to hold it with the care that it deserves. You see, the disorganized attachment style typically develops when the earliest caregiving relationship was itself a source of fear, when the person who was supposed to make you feel safe was also the person you needed to be safe from. Now, this might be through direct harm or through a parent whose own unresolved pain made them frightening or unpredictable in ways they may not have been even aware of. The child in this situation faces an impossible dilemma. Every instinct says move toward the person who can comfort you. But every experience says that person is not safe. So the nervous system does something remarkable and heartbreaking at the same time. It tries to do both at once: approach and withdraw simultaneously. The result is a fragmented, contradictory experience of relationships throughout life. The inner world here is often very chaotic. There's no stable belief about self or others, just a rapid cycling between I'm okay, I'm not okay, between you're safe and you'll hurt me. The emotional self that formed in those early years learned something devastating. Nowhere is safe, not even love. Now, in relationships, the disorganized pattern can look like intense, passionate connection followed by sudden sabotage, desperately wanting closeness and destroying it when it arrives, being overwhelmed by both abandonment and intimacy, relationships that feel electrifying but destabilizing. Now, this is not drama for drama's sake. This is a nervous system that never got to learn what safe love feels like. And so it cannot recognize it or even hold it when it finally arrives. This might resonate if your relationships feel chaotic, even when you're genuinely trying. If you feel like two different people, one who craves deep connection and one who runs from it the moment it feels real. If closeness itself carries a sense of danger, even with people who have given you no reason to be afraid. Now, if this is your pattern, I want to say something directly to you. This is not who you are. This is what happened to you. And those are very different things. Healing here is possible. It happens in safe, consistent relationships, including therapeutic ones, where your nervous system slowly learns what it never got the chance to learn the first time, which is that closeness does not have to mean danger, that you can be loved and safe at the same time. Please do not give up on that. Now, let's answer this question: can we actually change? Is this just who I am? Is this fixed? And the answer, and I want you to really hear this, is no. These patterns are not personality traits. They are learned responses, sophisticated, deeply ingrained, profoundly human, but learned, which means they can be unlearned, updated, replaced with something new. Research consistently shows that what's called earned secure attachment is entirely possible. People move from anxious, avoidant, or even disorganized patterns to secure ones, not by pretending the old patterns didn't exist, but by understanding them, by developing what psychologists call reflective function, the ability to observe your own inner world with curiosity rather than judgment. Now, this is exactly the work therapy does, and specifically, it's what a relational therapy approach, one that takes your history seriously, is designed to facilitate. You are not your attachment style, you are the person who has the capacity to understand it. And that understanding is where everything changes. I want to hear from you. Which of these four patterns felt most familiar? You don't have to have all the answers. Even just noticing a flicker of recognition is worth something. Please drop it in the comments. Secure, anxious, avoidant, disorganized, or maybe a mix. And if you want to share a little of what came up for you while watching this, I read every comment. This is a space for that. Your attachment style is not a verdict on who you are. It is a window into where you've been. It is the story your nervous system wrote before you had language, before you had choice, before you had any idea that one day you'd be sitting here watching a video trying to understand yourself a little better. That desire to understand, that is not small. That is everything. The work of changing your patterns is not quick. It is not linear, but it is entirely profoundly worth it. Not just for your relationships, but for your relationship with yourself. Thank you for spending this time with me. If this video helped you, please share it with someone you think will need it. You might just be giving them something they didn't know they were looking for. Like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.